How do you know when to change iconic characters? In recent years, there's been an attempt by the big two publishers to change up characters like Spider Man, Captain America, Batman, Superman. The problem is, most of those changes have been very poorly received. A lot of the existing fan base hates them. There's a new batch of fans who, in theory, like them, but that like doesn't seem to show up for sales. What do you do? How do you freshen up a brand without isolating your current audience? Hey, everybody, this is Perch. I'm not going to pretend to have the answers for this topic, but what I do want to do is kind of lay this out so people recognize it is a more complex problem than people give it credit for. You get this feedback all the time that your brand, your character is becoming stale. Once you've told 500 Spider-Man stories, how do you make somebody show up for the 501st? A lot of people will say, you should just keep comics the way they are, but you can't do that exactly. If the character doesn't evolve, doesn't change, doesn't have new conflict or new adventures, then people will get bored. You will see feedback talking about how nothing really happens here, or it's the same old stuff over and over and over again. You need to do something new, but not too new. When Brian Michael Bendis came in and started working on Superman, and now we have news of his departure, he immediately kind of aged up John Kent to make him older, like, frankly, Superboys we've seen in the past, including Connor, who Bendis also wrote over in Young Justice. He revealed Superman's identity to the world, which had been done before, and changed the dynamic around Lois and Clark's relationship, and brought in some new villains, but none of them stuck. The interesting thing is that Bendis took criticism kind of from all sides. The reveal of Superman's identity had been done before, and Bendis was panned for that. At the same time, people were complaining that Bendis was changing too much, and they really just wanted more of what Tomasi did. But Tomasi introduced John Kent and some of these other elements as a kid, which was relatively new, sort of. It's interesting because it's a perfect illustration, Bendis's time on Superman, of how you could make a number of changes to a title and you can get criticized for both changing too much and not changing enough simultaneously. Now, by the way, before anybody jumps in the comments with that, there's a whole kind of key element, which is, and maybe it's the elephant in the room, is the story any good? You can either change things or not change things as much as you want, but if the story stinks, it really doesn't matter. And I kind of feel that's where a lot of these things go. I think a lot of comic fans, there will certainly be some knee jerk reactions. You can see it in the news about Daniel Cherry's hiring, or some of what Marvel has done with the X-Men titles or other things. There's plenty of examples of places where comic books make changes and there are people who have kind of an immediate negative reaction. But overall, where the rubber seems to hit the road is the story, is the art, is the product good? I think, when they had Miles Morales take over for Peter Parker in Ultimate Spider-Man, it didn't have a lot of, negativity. It did later, when they started to integrate Miles into the universe. They started making comments about retiring Peter for good and everything else. But most fans seem to be comfortable, or at least okay, with the idea of Peter Parker in the suit in the main universe and Miles taking over in the Ultimate universe. And that's because Miles' story felt kind of fresh and new and different and good when it originally started. And I think that it all comes down to that. You can't just keep a story doing the same old things over and over and over again. That writing is repetitive and poor. At the same time, if you come in and you believe the solution is simply change everything up. I know, let's change the lead character in from a man to a woman. Let's blow up the whole supporting cast and have a new supporting cast and these kinds of things. That alone is not a guarantee for success. In fact, if anything, that alone is a guarantee of worse sales, because you do have some people clinging on to a title simply because it's what they know and what's comfortable. If you start changing everything around and you don't bring the story, then you have a mess on your hands. This represents a tough answer, I think, for a lot of people in creative, which is there are no easy shortcuts. There's no simple way to simply, wave a magic wand and the comic is successful. You have to put in the work. In this case, the work is a really good story, a really good plot, a really good drive. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. That's the interesting spot comics finds themselves in. Now, I used some examples of different times when the comic industry did the all new, all different, all completely random. And I think by and large, every single time that the big two, at least, and this really doesn't apply to the indies, they don't have the same kind of mechanism. I suppose if you took Archie and you said, hey, in a bold new plot twist, Archie is now a Latina female, and she doesn't go to school, but she works at a construction site, and her supporting cast are just all kind of gender and race swapped, and why not? I mean, that would be something similar. That would be taking long term continuity. You could do the same for a couple of books, but generally, this is a big two problem. And also, generally speaking, the initiatives alone of just, hey, the characters you thought you knew are completely all new, all different now, I think have almost always failed. There's probably a couple instances, and when I say almost always failed, I say not just recently. A lot of people think that I'm talking just in the 2014, 2015 time period, but the Clone Saga with Spider-Man with Ben Reilly and all the rest of that stuff. I mean, there's some people who have some nostalgic feelings to it, but it was pretty panned. When Hal Jordan switched to become Parallax, even though some people did like Kyle Rayner in the end, that was panned as well. That level of kind of all new, all different stuff, it didn't go over well. It never typically goes over well. If you have a really strong, compelling story, you can win people back. But oftentimes it feels like they do things in the wrong order. They do the massive switch, the big PR stunt, the you thought you knew, but now it's completely different. And then maybe they figure out how to get a good writer or how to tell a good story out of it. It's rarely the other way around. And I think that's because people write to the stunt. They don't write to the fans. What I mean by that is somebody gets in their head, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if, Moon Knight was suddenly a young Asian girl in a wheelchair? Wouldn't that be crazy? And so they write to that stunt, and they don't write to whatever the cool story would be with those characters included within it. I think you could do just about anything with comics, including changing the main characters and changing everything around. I think that's completely possible. And I think if you don't, things do get stale. But if it's not accompanied by a good story, it's better not to do it at all. That's my opinion anyway. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about change, about when it goes right, when it goes wrong, and is it possible to change the character utterly and completely as long as you have a good story and get people to keep going with it? And who are these fans that always chime in? They always chime in, going, "Oh, I love this new direction. This new direction is totally for me." And then you look at the sales; it's like, yeah, but you've lost 40% of your sales. I don't. I do not believe you. I don't. I don't think it is for you. So why are you saying that in the first place? Anyway, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notification. Follow me on social media. Send me an email. Most importantly, though, thanks for listening.